Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren. I'm the production manager here. Hi, you can now see me. I'm the production manager here at HV Studio. I am here to introduce you as a meet and greet for the current HB Studio Residency Artists. We're so happy to have them. And as you're coming in, if you could please not only mute yourself but also turn off your video because we want to pay attention to our main focus, our audiences, not our audiences. Whoa, I'm blanking today, guys. It is a nice day today, but I want to focus on our residency artists and our moderator for today. And I'd love to introduce them to you. Our panelists today are Ashley Teague and Gwen Kingston from the Untitled Whale Project. We have Jacqueline Raymond and Amanda McDowell from International Girls Project. Ensemble, excuse me. Kayhan Irani from There Is a Portal. We have Blair Simmons from Print Dialogue. We have Hyojin Park from MFA and Morgan Smith from Averno Wild Things. Just to give you a sort of rundown of what our HB Rehearsal residency offers. It's typically a workspace on site, but currently it is virtual and it is for theater artists, and it culminates in a public showcasing of their creative works. And this year's recipients represent an international array of artists and voices, and their projects explore themes such as identity, community, marginalization, and empowerment, and particularly those that stimulate communication and dialogue across genres, cultures, and beliefs. And this program has been supported in part by the New York State Council on the Arts and with the support of Governor Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. Also public funding from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council and many other of our generous supporters to HB Studio. So thank you again. Our conversation will be moderated by Gabriel Gonzalez. He is a filmmaker, theater director, writer, and independent researcher. His work explores the staging of worlds and the role of narrative, dreams, magic, and the place in the age of extinction. His work has been presented in Mexico internationally, in institutions and publications such as Museo Tameo in Mexico City, Royal Albert Hall in London, Klima magazine. He received a PhD in philosophy, art, and critical thought from the European Graduate School, and he also holds a degree from the Royal College of Art and the Queen Mary University of London. He lives and works between Mexico City and New York, and he also served as the 2020 HB Residency Reading Series Artist Panel. He was one of our wonderful artist panels this year, and that is why he is going to be our moderator. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and Gabriel, please take it away.
Thank you so much for that, Lauren. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much for our artists for being here with us. We were just saying that it's a kind of unique opportunity now with Zoom to be able to have all of you here together, which would have been quite hard in the Playwrights Theater at HB. But just to get things going, I would like to maybe just to get to know who you guys are, maybe we can start with an introduction of who you are, what your work is about, the piece that you will be doing at the residency, which Lauren so kindly has already mentioned. And also, I would personally like to know where you're joining us from, because I think we have quite a wide geographic area coming up. So I don't know if somebody would like to begin.
Hi, I'll start. Thank you so much for having us. My name's Ashley Teague. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am working with Gwen Kingston on what is called Untitled Whale Project, which we are in process of debating the title, so you maybe will all have to weigh in on it today. I'm in New York City right now. And Gwen and I have worked together. Geez, I was thinking about this morning. I think this is like our fourth full collaboration together. We just got back from coal country. We were collecting stories in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, Ohio, creating some work. A lot of our work is created out of first-person testimonies and research adaptation. And so I think this is like our fourth full collaboration, but we've worked together on maybe upward close to maybe 10 projects together now. And I am the artistic director of a company called Notch Theater Company. Check us out and the work that we do, which is about partnering with communities to tell their real stories on stage. And I'm a director, and Gwen is the brilliant playwright behind Untitled Whale Project. So I'll let her introduce herself and maybe say more about the play, the actual play.
Thanks, Ash. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm doing math in my brain. That sounds about right. Sounds like a lot when you add them up. Hi, I'm Gwen Kingston, and as Ashley mentioned, I am the playwright on Untitled Whale Project. I'm speaking from Brooklyn today. I also use she, hers pronouns. During some of our recent projects, Ashley and I got interested in literary adaptation, specifically adapting classic literature in heavy quotations. And we worked on a very rewarding, fun adaptation of Anna Karenina together last year. And when we started looking at Moby Dick, one of the things that is, so this is an adaptation of Moby Dick. And one of the things that's so striking about it is that it is an entirely male book. I mean, there's not a single woman in it. It's kind of incredible. And of course, that is not so very unusual in classic literature, but of course, if you had a story that was entirely female and excluded any kind of male characters, that would mean something, right? That would mean surely this must be a feminist piece. This must have, there must be a reason. So we got interested in what it would mean to get together a diverse group of female artists, actors, from different backgrounds with different ideas of what womanhood and femaleness meant to them, and sort of try on this cast of characters, these male characters, the trappings of this piece, and sort of ask ourselves, does this feel universal? Does this feel, what does that do to the text? So we're very excited about this residency, partly because this piece is so much about bodies and gender and performance, that being in a space together with these artists feels really vital in terms of us taking the next step with this piece and sort of learning more about what it means. Bodies performing gender in space is kind of core to this. And particularly in this moment when, even more than ever, female bodies are really, once again, as always, but more so now, sort of political battlefields, right? Our bodies are something that are so heavily discussed right now in the news and in as we move through this Supreme Court nomination. So being in a room with a group of women talking about this feels ever more vital. So that's me and Untitled Whale Project.
Yeah, what do you want it to be called?
I want it to be called Dick. It's an all-female Moby Dick.
Wants to be, and I want it to be called Moby Tits. So those are the options. Please weigh them. You'll be voting later. Should we hand it off? Gabriel, you got it. Okay,
thank you for also bringing in that vote element. This is just like up the stakes. So that's good. Does anybody want to continue?
Sure, I can jump in. Hi, I was gonna say good morning. Where am I? Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda McDowell. I work with Jacqueline Raymond. We are the co-founders of International Girls Ensemble. So Jacqueline and I started, we were actors and our performers and creators and directors. And then our organization started as a production company that we became more into arts education and seeing the need to empower girls through arts ed. And so that's sort of the direction that our organization went. So we started this production company, made it into a nonprofit, and now we run a 501c3 that helps girls all over New York City. And then we have partners throughout Southeast Asia, where we go usually every year. This would have been our 5th summer returning to work with the girls again, but clearly that didn't happen in our global climate. And what we do is we devise original pieces of theater based off of the work and the needs of the communities that we are working with. So if the girls are really upset about the election, or they're upset about sanitary products or things like that, that becomes the basis of the work that we do. We were really excited because we were going to be working with high school age girls this year, getting them together in the space, which is going to be wonderful. So now we're sort of reassessing what that looks like in a Zoom world. Some of our participants also graduated and went to college, so they're all in different spaces in their lives as well. But we're really excited, like this allows us to connect with our international participants in a different way, which is really exciting because one of us doesn't need to physically be there to facilitate. We can create a whole new world with these incredible Zoom squares, right? It becomes a different platform and like medium to sort of like paint on. Yeah, Jacqueline, do you want to jump in and add anything?
You covered a lot. Thank you, Amanda. I don't know if you can hear my child crying in the background. Sorry if you can. It's great timing. Yeah, so just like Amanda said, we've been working together as well. Just like Gwen and Ashley were talking about their, history of working together. Amanda and I think have known each other since 2006, 2007. Wow. And we started our production company back in 2013 and became a 501c3 2 years ago, 2018. So yeah, I'm not going to, she pretty much gave you a great lay of the land, but we are really excited we can't, tell the audience or the other folks on the panel what the project will be about, as it is participant driven. So we are guiding this devised piece of theater. So we're not sure what the context will be, but it's certainly, we're working with identifying females. So it is going to be from this group, whomever it ends up being, which it has shifted a bit, like Amanda said, due to COVID. People are scattered a bit. And I think, again, it gives us a good opportunity to bring in technical elements and maybe connect the girls in Thailand that we work with in Cambodia to our participants here in New York City now. So yeah, we're not sure what the project will ultimately be, but that is what HB is giving us, is the space to figure that out. And have the message of the piece come from our participants, which is always so exciting to see what they come up with. So yeah, I'll stop talking now. So nice to meet everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. Who wants to go next?
I'll jump in. So hi everyone, my name is Kayhan Irani, and from Participant Driven, my project is a one-woman participatory theater piece that looks at themes of migration and dispossession and connection, and makes a space for audiences to go deeper into those themes by exchanging and telling stories along with mine. The piece is kind of a larger work of community building, and it'll take the form of the show as well as a pedagogical model and curriculum, as well as a kind of train the trainer model, to use mostly in refugee and immigrant serving youth spaces, whether they be community centers or schools, colleges and universities, or art centers. And I'm speaking to you from Flushing, Queens, from my mother's home where I am currently. And my work really for the last 20 years has been along the lines of grassroots community engaged cultural work, where I use theater and storytelling modes to facilitate transformation of consciousness and the kind of inherent creative power that each person has. And so while it's using theater and theater-based models, it's not always in a theater or necessarily about theater, but more about how one can use arts as a portal, as a doorway into understanding the context that they live in, understanding the stories that they've both lived and seen, but also have been given by dominant society, and kind of telling new stories and weaving new ways forward into the future based on what their values are around liberation and social justice. So I'm really excited to be part of this cohort, which seems to be echoing so many of those themes and so much of that work, and also be back at HB, where I found kind of one of my first artistic openings when I was a middle schooler. Actually started taking classes at HB in 6th grade, and coming on the subway from Queens with my mother and my best friend and his mother for Saturday classes with Marlene Mancini, and then transitioned into kind of teen classes with Trudy Steibel, and was the first place that really took me seriously as an immigrant artist, as a girl artist, as a performer, as a young person, took me seriously, took my creativity seriously. And so it's an honor to be back in this place that showed me so much of, gave me so much resource and showed me so much about, what I could do and what my potential was, despite, all the setbacks that this world also had for me. So it just feels like a great coming home in a way, and that's so appropriate because the work also is about coming home.
Thank you so much for that, Kayhan. Anyone who else wants to go now? Blair?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. I was being shy. But yeah, so I'm Blair Simmons. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in Brooklyn. And my table is not usually right here. I moved it so that it would look good when I did this. So my project is called Print Dialogue. I had a question about theater and theater making. The theater I was making and thinking about was not really satisfying me because it wasn't surprising to me. I wasn't surprising myself. And I wanted to, and I always have been really interested in introducing elements of controlled chaos into theater. And so what I did was I wrote a computer program that writes a theater script that's different every time that it's performed. And I have the actors read the script for the first time on stage. So they have to be really good improvisers. It's definitely a work in progress, but I also just want to say that I'm not making, I didn't make a computer program that writes all plays. That always sounds really scary to people. I wrote a computer program that writes a specific type of play that I was interested in analyzing, and a certain type of play I was interested in breaking into pieces and into parts. And I can even say that my partner, she said that when she first read some of the scripts that, this just sounds like you're talking. So it really is a specific type of play. It's not, we're not trying to replace theater makers. I'm talking to a lot of theater makers. But as a human person outside of this project, I am a queer theater artist, but I also teach at NYU. I teach creative technology, do a lot of coding, a lot of 3D modeling and printing. Yeah, and honestly, I'm really honored to hear about all your projects. It sounds so cool. Such a weird time to be theater makers, but I also am just really inspired to hear about all the things you guys are saying. So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Blair. Thank you. Morgan, would you like to?
Hiya, my name is Morgan Smith. I use all pronouns, keep it funky. I'm 21. I'm a student at NYU, actually. So we're at the same school. And the project that I am working on is a bit of a beast. It's called Averno, and it is an immersive interlocking universe of musicals. There are currently 15 musicals that all take place in the same small town. And they interlock with comic books, fantasy novels, virtual reality, immersive like online participation and events, all kinds of stuff. And they all interlock in the small town of Averno, Virginia, which, as all towns in the US do, has kind of a bloody past. And all of the main characters are women and / or queer. So it's looking at sort of what the history of spaces mean, and how like an identity interacts with that, and how we can and how retaking narratives and stuff like that helps you sort of move on and heal. And it is also all fantasy based with an entirely new mythology that is non-patriarchal. which has been really fun to play with because I was a huge fantasy nerd growing up, but all the sort of Tolkienian fantasy systems that exist are very focused on like patriarchal ways of thinking and ways of thinking that rely a lot on colonization, like all of the narratives of like travel and of taking spaces and taking people and all of that. So creating something that is kind of the entire opposite of that, and has to do with how fantasy spaces can help people heal. So that's the Averno Universe. It actually has been surprisingly good during quarantine because it is so online based. We have a team of about 70 people collaborating on it. And we've been running a lot of really cool events that have had about 5,000 to 10,000 participants most of the time. So it's been a lot. I'm tired, quite frankly, but having a lot of fun. So I will be working on a theater piece from that universe that follows a group of high school students during the summer after graduation in Averno as they are looking to leave or like interrogating what it means to stay. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Hyojin?
Hello. I just found this book. It's a Respect for Acting. It's the Uta Hagen. It's a Korean version. So actually one of the reasons how I went to New York to study the Uta Hagen acting technique. So I'm really grateful and honored to be a part of this group. And I'd like to thank HB Studio again. I'm Hyojin Park. My pronouns are she, her. My project MFA, can I say my full title? There's a little bit cursing in it, but it's a master. Yeah, I will go for it. Okay, so Masters of Fucking Over Artists of Color. So basically, it's about like discrimination and in MFA program, because based on my experience and also I interview other students of color in different graduate school, how they experience in their institution. And because I know in the States, I became emotional, right? But anyway, I'm in Korea. So in the States, I think diversity, inclusion, and equality for people of color, those words are really popular buzzwords, but nobody really make actions for it. So if that makes sense, because even my school, they always say that, oh, our school is very diverse. My school is, we include everybody. Yes, because they chose a lot of students of color. But the reality in the program, I didn't really feel I was treated fairly because I was an international student. Also, I was a person of color. So that is about. So I like to talk about diversity and how we can, it's basically how people can think about real diversity means, particularly in education. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hyojin. I would like to ask all of you, because if you guys feel free to speak to each other, respond to what everyone is saying, I would like to ask what the genesis was for some of these ideas. Hyojin, I know that your work has to do with testimonials that you took, that you had from people, students of color at some of these theater universities, and that was part of, as I understand it, part of the genesis for this piece. I would also ask it for all of you. What was there a particular something, a trigger, something that kind of made this thing happen for you? And also tied to that, if you guys have a particular mission as a theater artist. I know, Kayhan, you've talked about activism as being an integral part of your own voice within theater, and on a very equal standing. So also, if you have anything to say to that, any of you have anything to say to that? Hyojin, would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I decided to write this play, if that's okay, because of, as I told you, based on my experience, I'm from Korea, so I grew up with the all Korean people. So there's no race discrimination in my life until I went to the States. So it was very like interesting, and at the same time, it's very hurtful experience because I was just being me, but people discriminated against me, if that makes sense, you know. And then I decided to make my own community, who were like most likely people of color, and then who had the same experience with mine. And then I told them that I like to start my own like play, which is MFA. And then I interviewed them, and then I got a lot of ideas from there, like, you know, from the interview. That's how it started, if I answer the question.
Absolutely. No, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the rest?
I'll
Okay.
just add and kind of join hands with what Hyojin talked about. And this idea, I guess, you know, thank you, Hyojin, for explaining what your experience was, and this stark, I've been understanding it in terms of dispossession, not this idea of migration or forced migration, you're dispossessed from your land and where you live in your culture, but also as a woman of color growing up in America, being dispossessed from my mind and being dispossessed from my creativity. And I think the genesis of my work has been a long time coming, but really comes out of being, you know, an artist and a storyteller and a performer in my soul, yet continually coming up against roadblocks in the quote unquote creative world that would shoehorn me or basically make me feel like I have nothing to offer creatively or in terms of my thinking in my mind, or that the way I should offer my creativity should be in a certain line, which is a very limited way people were seeing me and who I am or who they expected me to be. And so this idea that we, even in the creative world, even in the world of arts, can dispossess people of their actual creativity in order to ask them to participate, to say, you know, I mean, Hyojin probably comes from a deep, deep, deep tradition of Korean arts and culture and storytelling and theater that probably had, you know, 0.5% room in America to breathe and to explore. Same with me. I mean, South Asian and West Asian storytelling traditions, oral traditions are so deep and tens of thousands of years old, yet are not seen as important works to be explored over and over again and told over and over again. So that's where my activism kind of comes in, is because who are we without imagining a world where we can all have the dignity to be creative and tell our own stories. And that goes hand in hand with both breaking down the racism and the oppression in the arts world, but also goes hand in hand breaking down racism and oppression in the world at large. And so this piece is just one of the next iterations of that type of work, really doing it from a very intimate and vulnerable place, where it's the first time I'm sharing my story of immigration, migration, and my people's story of migration and displacement, in order to open a space where people can honestly and vulnerably look at their own stories and the ways that these themes have shown up in their lives, whether they're migrant or immigrant or not. We've all been dispossessed from something deep inside of us that we need to reclaim in order to break free from these awful oppressive structures.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you, Kayhan. Yeah? Jacqueline?
Yeah, sorry, got a little frozen for a second. Just speaking to what Kayhan was so eloquently, you know, saying, I can't speak to, you know, I think I'm freezing. Oh no, am I freezing?
But we can hear you.
Oh, good. sorry. Gosh. As a, you know, as two white women, Amanda and I have been learning and unlearning a lot of our own, you know, biases, and just wanting to kind of acknowledge that in this space. But just in terms of speaking of our genesis of where we're coming from as as women, we started our production company many years ago based on seeing one-dimensional portrayals of women in theater, in New York City theater that we were going to as audience members. And that prompted us to have producing female playwrights and kind of giving a platform for women to kind of be the center of their own stories instead of men writing stories for women, which is what we were seeing and being a part of as actors and frustrated with that. And then, as Amanda said, we decided it kind of wasn't enough and looked to our arts education background, as we both work as teaching artists and have that background. So we look to arts education and are both advocates for arts education in schools, especially New York City public schools, which is how we came to be International Girls Ensemble, getting our 501c3 so we could go into New York City public schools who don't have access to arts education and specifically concentrate on girls, because girls are left behind mostly in our world, as we know. And mostly girls of color, for sure. So that's kind of where we are coming from, and using in our programming, we're using, theater of the oppressed techniques, using Boal, using our experience as devisers to tell stories and amplify girls' voices and give them a platform.
I'd love to jump on that and say that, I think part of the genesis, honestly, for this project was Ashley and I had this desire to just to be working with more female artists, and we would work on projects and go, gosh, we know so many wonderful female actors and there are only so many parts for them, and in this play. And so we were excited. We were kind of hungry to find something that would allow us to work with a lot of female artists, and that's part of how this project kind of started to develop, I think, was that desire. And then also, as you said, as two white women, acknowledging that we may each hold a particular piece of a female experience, but looking for more voices and different voices and those who've experienced being a woman in this world differently than I have or Ashley has, or, each other have, has been a big part of that, the sort of the hunger for this piece. In terms of the work that I do, I like to say that I'm interested in questions of power, privilege, and protest. And so I'm interested in figuring out sort of identifying power dynamics in a story and then seeing what it's like to flip them, or seeing what the dominant voices are telling a story, and then see if there's another voice that's been kind of subsumed that can be lifted and kind of brought out. So anyway, it's wonderful to hear about your work, Jacqueline and Amanda and everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sort of like, I'm also sort of stuck in, I really appreciate the conversation that you ladies are bringing in around race. And I just feel like we're at a time where the stakes are so high right now, and there's so much potential to actually be making change in our extremely racist industry. And it's hard for me to move forward or like to do a play on Zoom or like have a conversation outside of that right now, because the momentum feels so strong and the demands feel so well articulate, so clear. And I am like so interested in how we're all doing that work, and how, I'm sure we've all, or hopefully we've all read the We See You White American Theater demands. And I'm so curious how each of us in our own spaces are like implementing that or processing that. I'm so interested in how HV Studio is working around that. I'm so interested in how, like, also as women, we can like form a coalition that says like, this, or it's, we accept this and nothing less, and we're moving this forward for the industry, because these issues that you're bringing up they're just so dire, and we find like there's energy around it, and there's conversation, people are waking up for the first time, and so I really appreciate that being brought into this space, and I'd love to spend time with everyone discussing how we're tackling that kind of thing. And I'm doing this training with Nicole Brewer, who had a terrible MFA experience for similar, reasons. And I shared this article she shared with us where she like really breaks down what's wrong with these training spaces and how they could be more culturally competent and be doing this work. So thank you for that. And thank you for for your play. I can't wait to hear it. And I'm excited that we have this network too. Like, let me know if there's any way I or Notch can support that work that you're doing. It's very exciting to hear what everyone's working on.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I mean, I think maybe following up on that, on what is now being talked about, obviously when these submissions arrived at HB and when you all were selected, this was previous to the pandemic. So it's been a strange, crazy, bizarre year that we could not have expected. And, obviously theater has been one of the industries that right now is being caught and suffering the most from some of these consequences of the coronavirus pandemic. So I would like to ask all of you as well, what would you like to see changed in theater, as an industry once the pandemic is over? There are these moments that are kind of an opportunity to, like you're saying, actually to reimagine things, and to kind of really reformulate what has clearly not been working for a very long time for way too many people, So what would you like to see change? What would you maybe like to see preserved once we come out of this historical moment?
Something that I teach at NYU in the making process for creative tech, I actually think is really applicable here for making theater. And it's so backing up, there's always been a push in technology for people to like make things for social good. And the problem with that is you end up with like all these technologies for people who are blind, perhaps, that never even consulted blind people and asked them what they needed and brought blind people into the room. And so there's kind of like two approaches that I teach. And one of them is, and I would love, and I'm sure there are so many people doing this work. And so I don't want to say this is like just my perspective. There are people doing this work in theater. But my perspective is like that bringing the people into the room that you're making the thing for, and I think that really applies to theater, is really important. And asking them what their needs are is like number one. And then the second thing is like, what kind of questions are you asking of yourself and of your work? Like, if once you sit with yourself and you say, okay, so who am I and what is my perspective and like what positionality am I coming from? And once you can identify those things, then you can say, okay, this project that I'm making, and this is particular to tech, but I think it could be good for theater too, where it's like, okay, who is this project for? Who's the audience? Who can engage in this work and who cannot? Who does this project benefit? And is there anybody who is harmed by this project? And so I think once you can identify all of those things and all of those items, then you're able to kind of have like a better picture of your positionality, the positionality that your project exists in, and how it's going to like impact the people who are exposed to that technology. So like another thing that I do is like for example, with the sculptures that I make sculptures as well. People who are visually impaired can't see the sculptures. So do I want to have like descriptions in my own voice about my own work for those people? And so I don't know, those are the kinds of like questions and the things that I think about around my work. And in this project in particular, actually, like it's in English. It's, I have to say, like this project is in English. And it's something that I want to expand on. I want to work with other people to put it in other languages. So all of these things, and it's really complicated. It's really hard work to do because you're asking questions that are outside of your own frame of reference. But those are kind of the things that I think about, and that I would hope that, going forward, as everyone's, having their moments of realization, that they start integrating new processes into their making, and new questions. And yeah, I would like to see a lot of that. Oh, and then bringing the people into the room that you're making things for.
Yeah, I feel like I'm hearing you say seats at the table and how are we actually serving and addressing community and stuff like that. And And, you know, when the pandemic first started, I was getting all these emails of theater companies sort of trying to tell me how they're relevant. We got this online program and this thing, and it sounded like so much noise. And the theaters I actually remember are the ones who open their lobbies to protesters. And so, you know, on this training I'm doing with Nicole, she put it as like the theaters that weren't actually serving community, like they're probably not going to make it. How is our work? How is our craft actually in service of our communities? How are we not just like service delivery and program development? How are we part of a larger movement, justice movement, right? That is what our craft comes from initially, right? That's the root of it. So how are we actually part of that? And it makes me think of like overhauling our networks, which are really problematic, and our boards and funding sources, and like using our work to really promote economic shift and really thinking about dollars in that way. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about.
Morgan or Amanda, yeah.
I think that like a lot of the ways that I like throughout this entire like the pandemic and all of the conversations about like racism and theater and stuff like that, there's been all of this like spinning in circles surrounding systems, which are like super, super important. But I'm somebody who never really got the chance to even like be a part of or like interact with those systems, because like I'm a college student. I only moved to New York a year ago. And so all of these like these theaters and programs and like all of that kind of stuff was never really a world that I got entirely into. I was starting to get there, but like I didn't know these people. I didn't know these groups. I didn't know these theaters and stuff. And I've always worked very much online and very much with like, I hate the word fandoms, but like that's very much where a lot of our followers come from. And so we've been working really closely with the people who love our work. We have 100,000 followers, which is a lot of people to be dealing with. And they're very majority young, and very majority young women. And so throughout all of this, we've been doing a lot of live streams and hosting workshops and just trying to like create space to get like face-to-face with people, to do almost like triage, like just trying to be there for people and be with people, because while we're trying to fix the systems and while we are trying to get the funding and the legislation and all of that, like there's still people, there's still kids, like a lot of kids that I talk to on a daily basis who are like just trying to get through high school and who care so much about theater and have dreams about moving to New York and going on Broadway and stuff like that. And they are sitting here and watching all of this stuff happen, and they are scared shitless, pardon my language. So we've been hosting workshops. We hosted a workshop called the Future Broadway Creators over the summer that had 600 kids who came and wrote musicals over the course of 4 weeks with us. And they were 80% young women, which was really cool. And we had a lot of like creators and artists of color who came and like talked on that and stuff like that. But I've been sort of just trying to get like face to face with as many people as possible and work with them in these like online workshops, and in just like we've been doing these little like therapy session live streams every night where people come and they're like, here's what I'm feeling scared about for theater today, and we're like, cool, let's talk about it and hang out together and just sort of still hold that space and remember that there's still a lot of people out there who are trying to be people too right now, which is hard. So that's kind of where we've been at.
Yeah, and Morgan, thank you for sharing. And everyone, I think you all nailed it. Like, I think we all just want to like burn it down and start again. Like, that's at least how I feel. Like, I'm happy that we're at this place where we're like at a pause, and we see White American Theater and Broadway for Racial Justice and all of these organizations are like, this is broken. And now that we are in this place of like a blackout, like how can we come out the other end and begin to fix it? Because we're not going to see it completely fixed in our time. But I do think we're on the right journey and the right path to creating Broadway that isn't just 100% owned by like capitalism and like white people. And like diversifying what that work looks like. And like Blair, I think you like nailed it when you said like, we build a museum and everything, and then we bring blind people in and are like, oh, does this work for you? It's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work from the conception. You know, we have to have, equity needs to be built in from the groundwork up. It can't just start at the end and throw actors on stage and say, this is now equity, because that's not what it looks like. And I work at Harlem School of the Arts as a teaching artist. So it's really great. I've been there for 8 years. And like Saturday, we have all these amazing kids like log on Saturdays who are just like hungry to make theater and like engage with each other and like see themselves represented on stage in some way. I just worked with the 3 seniors to get them ready for college. Get out of here, Blair. We'll have to talk about that.
I also taught at HSA, so I just direct messaged her.
I love that. I like screamed out loud. No one else saw that. I didn't realize. They were just like so ready. I had to prepare them to be in rooms where like, you're going to be in a room where your whole panel is going to be white people listening to your monologue about being a Latina woman. So like, don't let like, and this goes right into what your piece is, your MFA piece. Like, it's all of these things. Like the systems are broken on so many levels. So like, I'm so here to build them up correctly.
I would love us also to just think about pushing all these frameworks. Like, you know, I mean, we're talking about Broadway, and for me, that's never been the center of where creativity happens. Broadway, especially in the last 20 years, I think, has become more and more this kind of artificial and capital kind of money-induced place where producers go to make money rather than to foster new artists and new voices. And I really don't want Broadway to continue. I'm not interested in having a singular place controlled by a few individuals that is dominant in the world in terms of arts and letters. Again, Blair, you talked about language. I mean, English is only one language of thousands of languages in the world and thousands of storytelling traditions and aesthetics that have made this world what it is. And so what would it mean? I mean, truly, you know, when we talk about anti-racism stuff, we're talking about decentering whiteness. And so what would it mean to decenter the prominence of all of these institutions? I'm not really interested in an institution that replaces its artistic director with a person of color, if in fact all the traditions it's still propping up and relying on as its source of creativity and inspiration are Western white dominant traditions, one monolingual traditions. It's not interesting to me. It's not the future that we are currently living into. It's not the future I want to live into and I want my son to live into. You have multilingual people here who, to make it, are writing in English, are putting their work on in English. And that's, I feel like, you know, like when we say time's up for that. Like, it's unnecessary anymore. I don't care if, you know, the work I'm thinking about in the future, I'm not interested in writing in English anymore. I don't care if speaking people can't access my work. And so, I mean, like, what would we say industry-wide or institutionally or systemically, that like English will not be the dominant language of our theater production? What would that truly mean? And that would be scary to a lot of people, but think about that. If English is not the dominant language in which we produce theater in anymore, what would you have to do today to change and prepare for that future? What would you have to do with your community, with your schools, with your education to prepare for that future? That's what I'm interested in working on, and really that's the edge for me to push out of these thoughts, which can be just reproducing the same operational ideas, but with new faces and new colors at the head.
I really appreciate what you're saying, because a lot of my project is like queering even the idea of like the form of theater. Like, can we ask these questions? And I like this idea. Well, you didn't say community driven theater, but that's like what it like resonated with me, is people getting together and asking what their own needs are within their communities. And I just love what you're saying. I love what you're saying about, like, you know, really asking ourselves, like, what what do we consider normal, and why do we consider that normal, and if we can like change. And I'm coming from like a queer theory background, so for me the term is queering, but for a lot of other people it's other things. As language is fluid, means things to people. But yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying. Those are the things I think about all the time.
Thank you everyone. Thank you so much. I would like to possibly open up for our audience if there's any questions also. I mean, a lot of very, very stimulating, very interesting things are being said. So, I mean, I can't see our audience because you guys have your videos turned off, but maybe if you want to turn your video on, if you want to ask a question, it would be great to hear also some other perspectives. Okay, while we wait maybe for the audience, I wanted to ask you, of course, the residencies got postponed, they got delayed with also this situation. And I would just like to ask, in that time, if the pandemic has made you in some ways reassess what you wanted to get out of this HB residency, maybe certain things have become more important, certain things have not. I just wanted to hear from all of you what you expect to get from the HB residency, and if anything, any of those priorities perhaps were altered because of the situation that we've been living through. Not only the pandemic, but also, of course, Black Lives Matter, all the movement for racial equality too. So, Hyojin, do you want to begin?
Hello. Yeah. Actually, since the Black Lives Matter movement started, it might not be the answer for your question though, but I will still talk about it. But it's hard for me to write my piece because because it made me think about, what if I am trapped by my own bias, about towards people of color. You know what I mean? And then I have been educating myself, about the diversity and discrimination. And then, so through this residency program, I like to just explore those kind of like issues, interviewing people, and then keep developing the play. That was my main goal through this residency program, if that makes sense.
When you're thinking of developing, can I ask, are people picturing it on a stage, or are you picturing it like in a new theater future? Like what are you all dreaming into in terms of what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Because it started from like a solo show, my own solo show. And then I developed with the other characters, with the other actors. And I'm gonna shoot with the little videos and combine together. And then some scenes might be with the Zoom scenes. And then some scenes might shoot like a little films type, and then editing all together later on. Yeah.
What about Ashley? What about you and Gwen? What are you thinking in terms of what you just asked as well about the presentation of it, or also for HB, the residency? I mean, would this be possible to do in the residency? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we had like a 20-some hour drive through around coal country collecting interviews, and every day it was like a different. What are we thinking? Because it could be this, it could go this way, it could do this. No, the goal should be this way. No, we should be moving in that direction. And things are changing so fast, and faster than most of us can grasp it, that it's hard to know how to be nimble and respond urgently to what's happening. And so I think right now the plan is that we feel we really need to be in space with people, and that for this residency we'll be creating a hybrid sort of piece that has to be shared remotely. but that ideally the workshopping we're doing is more about the heart of the piece, and and less about the aesthetics of it at this stage, because I
agree. I think that what we were learning as we were trying to dream into a model of this that could be shared was that we were it's like there's two things, right? There's the pandemic, which is sort of has to do with adapting form and how something is shared, and then there is this extraordinary, as Ashley was saying, momentum in a social movement that is of course not new, but kind of has a new momentum, is in a new phase, that is making, I think, all of us question as where did you go? Oh, there you are. Hyojin, as you were just so, you were over there, now you're over here. As you were so eloquently saying, it does, I think, make us sort of re-examine our work and our lens, right? And wanting to ask ourselves, questions about what, does the world need this right now? And, if so, what is this for? Who is this for? So I think that what Ash and I kept coming back to on, as you're saying, these hours of driving around and thinking out loud, was this thing of what we need is more voices in a space together to talk about this, and to obviously safely and using all of the precautions, but we were we need more voices to interrogate this thing that I've made in a room by myself. I need more voices, more perspectives to pull at this and sort of investigate, what is here for us now in the world as it is now, not when I started writing this a year and a half ago.
And quite frankly, people have been out of work since March. Actors need work bad. We need to get money to actors, to artists. We need to be making together and giving people a chance to do their craft. What happens to the soul when you can't, artists are artists because they can't not be. If we could do anything else, we'd make so much more money, but we have to create, we have something we have to say, we have to. And so also making sure that those artists have an opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Jacqueline and Amanda, how does this resonate with your project too?
Yeah, so we're in a really similar space where we devise. So it's really so much about getting in the room together and building the trust first, and then being able to explore what that means, both through physicality and through their words. However, it is such an important time for young people to be connecting with each other. Even though they're in front of a screen all day long, they're not necessarily having bigger conversations about how they're feeling or how they're coping, or, what the future looks like for them. And it's really, it's so overwhelming it's overwhelming for us. I can only imagine being 15 or 16 and the whole world is on fire. And you're what is happening? I don't know where the next steps are for me. Now, we always did have a digital component because we have International Girls Ensemble. We work with a sub-ethnic group of people, the Karen people, who are refugees in Thailand. They're on the Thai border. So similar what's happening to the Rohingya people now happened to the Karen people about 40 years ago. And they still live in these refugee camps. So this is a group that we have gone back for 5 years in a row and continued a relationship with them, and have our first female ambassador, and helping with sustainable income for the young women there. So there was always going to be a digital component because they were going to be a part of this production. They were going to tell their stories when we were going to be there this summer. So we're missing that, and figuring out how to help them curate that from here is a whole other thing with access. The Burmese border is still closed, so they are not physically back at school yet. So they are similarly huddled around devices to attend school, like lots of children are globally.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, we're really similar again, like Amanda said, to Gwen, and actually kind of taking this opportunity to pause. And all of you have said, to pause and think of, decentering is huge for us right now, and thinking of what is important and why. Again, I think because it isn't our story, it is participant driven, so it is always important because they're telling it, but it is an opportunity to go, why now, and how can we contribute something meaningful So we are taking a bit of a pause because there's just so much going on. So a pause of just, teasing all of these really important issues out and seeing how we can contribute meaningfully moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What about you, Blair? What do you think in terms of what do you expect from the HB residency? How it changed with everything that's going on from the time you applied to now? What are your thoughts?
It's a really good question. I think my process, my theater making process has always kind of been like not very theatrical. Like even when I wasn't using coding to make my scripts, I never thought of my pieces as things that had an end goal, like a product, a finished product. I think of making as an act of research and as an act of continued learning and joy. Because for me, because I think of it as something that I like, that should be joyful for me and not stressful. And so I'm always thinking about it as this like ongoing object that every time I perform it, I learn something new. And so I actually think that, with everything going on in the world, I only think that will just continue to inform the way that I work and the way that I practice. I'm very against the idea of like a finished product for myself. I just think that there's always moments where that's real for other people. But for me, it's, I'm never satisfied unless I'm learning and I'm making and I'm changing things. And that is why I think I gravitate towards theater and performance because of this like lack of permanence. So yeah, I hope to just like continue to create and make and be in conversation with other people and the things going on in the world. And so I hope I just continue to hope to do that. And I'm grateful to be having this conversation with people who sound like you're all doing the same. So I don't know. I think it's all great.
Thank you, Blair. Hyojin, would you like to, maybe we can start closing. So would you like to just also tell us what you kind of expect, what you're thinking about for the HB residency?
I think really similar to everybody because as I say before, I like to keep like developing my play as a craft wise. I have to keep writing and then rewriting, and then I don't know. I think HB Studio for me, HB Studio is always there for me. So whenever I need any help, I can email them. I need some help for my project. So I think that's HB Studio is being HB Studio is enough, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have run out of time and we could keep talking about this for the rest of the day, but maybe leave something for next time. Thank you. I want to thank all of you, all the artists, for sharing so much, for opening up, for engaging with each other in such a thoughtful, inspiring way. Thank you. Thank you to our audience too. And I know that I personally am very much looking forward to see what all of these projects will look like. And thank you. Have a nice afternoon. Stay safe.
Thanks for facilitating.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriel. Thanks, everyone else.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah, thank you.